Today, I'm going to be talking to you about Guillaume-san. This is just my personal opinion, but two things about him always felt off with me. First off, Guillaume-san, I think he's eaten a demon before. I mean, look at him, he's huge. In the fan book, it says he was born with a good physique, but still, he's 7 foot 2 inches. And this is in the Taisho period, so that's pretty tall for a person in that period of time. And Tengen-san, he said he's never seen such a big person before, and he's from a shinobi family, but he's only 6 foot 4. So Guillaume-san is 8 inches taller than him. And in the fan book, it says Guillaume-san grew up in a poor family. So how did he grow up to be so big? Now, remember what happened with Genya? He got really big in a short period of time, and Tanjiro was surprised. Over a few months, he became much bigger, and he turned into a completely different person. My guess is this was because he ate a demon. Gotoge-sensei has a detailed background story for all the characters, so I don't think it's just a coincidence that Guillaume-san is 7 foot 2. Sensei made him this tall for a reason. But then you might be saying that eating a demon is strictly against the rules. I thought that too, but they never actually say that. And if that's the case, why is Genya still alive? And if you read on, you'll find more reasons why this probably isn't the case. Anyways, my point is, I don't think eating demons is against the rules for the Demon Slayer Corps, and eating a demon, that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of commitment if you ask me, and Tanjiro? He once said that Guillaume-san smells different from the others. And when he saw Genya after he ate a demon, he said something similar. So maybe he's not eating demons on a regular basis, but maybe he used to during a certain period, just like Genya. And these two, I feel like they're following a similar path. But Genya, he can't use any breathing techniques. On the other hand, Guillaume-san is one of the strongest in the force. Naturally, one would assume that he has a high affinity when it comes to breathing techniques, but maybe it's the opposite. And he's still the strongest guy on the force, so that says a lot about his strength. Speaking of breathing affinity, let's look at the Nichirin sword. Zenitsu's sword is covered with a thunder pattern. Rengoku's sword is covered with a flame pattern, and so on. As we see here, the pattern on the Nichirin sword changes based on the person's breathing technique. But in Guillaume-san's case, it's just an iron ball, no special colors or patterns. If I was the author, I'd color it some different way, something that resembles a rigid rock. Maybe I'd make it brown like the iron ball Tanjiro was training with. But the iron ball, it doesn't really stand out in any way. But wait, maybe the colors and patterns are on the inside. The iron ball is pretty big, so it's possible, but I don't know. Next, let's look at the axe. It's gray, but that's about it. Nothing about it really resembles a rock. It looks just like the axe Tanjiro used in episode 1, just an ordinary axe. And again, we're talking about the strongest guy on the force, so it's strange that his weapon's appearance is so ordinary. And not just his weapons, let's look at his moves. I'll be talking about the stone breathing technique, but there will be some spoilers, so skip this part if you want. Okay, ready? So the 5 major breathing techniques are water, flame, thunder, wind, and stone. And when Tanjiro uses the water breathing technique, we see water. With Zenitsu, we see thunder. With Rengoku, we see flame. With Sanemi, we see wind. But then when Guillaume-san uses the stone breathing technique, what do we see? Well, not much. I thought we'd see some kind of stone-like background when he uses the iron ball, but nothing. And it's not like stones are hard to draw. So why did this happen? And again, he's the strongest guy there, so I thought Sensei would emphasize that, but looking at the original, we never see that, not even once. Maybe we'll see it in future episodes of the anime, but in the original, it never happened. So my guess is Sensei did this on purpose, and I'm not saying this is proof, but in the Hashira training arc anime, the opening scene, we see a stone in the background when Gyomei-san appears. The other characters, they all got some kind of artwork in the background, but not Gyomei-san. Maybe Sensei is implying that his affinity to the stone-breathing technique is low or close to none. The color of the sword, the patterns, artwork, everything is just too ordinary, you know? Especially for the strongest guy on the force. But like I said before, he's still the strongest guy there, so that really says something about his strength. By the way, Gyomei-san once said to Genya, "I can move the stone without using the breathing technique." Maybe he was speaking from experience. Perhaps he had a high affinity with the stone breathing technique but chose not to use it because he wanted to see if he could push the stone without it. It's possible, but why would he do that? It doesn't make much sense. So my guess is he had a low affinity with the stone breathing technique, but managed to move the stone regardless. But just to clarify, I'm not saying he can't use the stone breathing technique. I'm just suggesting that maybe he had a really low affinity to it. So to summarize, he can use the stone breathing technique, but his affinity to it is very low. So he depends on his pure strength for the most part. By the way, in many cases, the second son has a tendency to have a low affinity to breathing techniques. For instance, Zenjiro, Rengoku-san's brother, was really upset when the sword didn't change color. And same with Genya. And Gyomei-san? He was actually the second son, according to the fanbook, so the pattern holds. But what about Muichiro? Well, in his case, he was the younger one, but he was also a twin. Him and his brother were born at the same time, and it's hard to determine who actually came out first. Remember Kin-san and Gin-san, the famous twins who lived for a very long time? They were twins too, but the one who was born first was considered to be the younger one. This is how some families decide who's the older one. Maybe their parents were the same. Muichiro came out first, which makes him the older one, but this pattern hasn't been proven. It's just a theory of mine, so we'll leave it at that. Anyways, if Gyomei-san had a low affinity to the stone breathing technique and he's eaten a demon before, him and Genya, they have a lot in common. Now let's move on to the events in episode 6 of the Hashira training arc. Everything I said about Gyomei-san, keep those in mind, and it might make you look at things in a different light. First, Tanjiro says Himejima-san smells different. Maybe he was implying that his strength came from elsewhere, or that he's eaten a demon before. But then maybe he was just saying that he was really strong and that's it. Next, Zenitsu. Looking at Gyomei-san, he says some are just born stronger than others. But what if he was implying that Gyomei-san had an unfair advantage because he's eaten demons before? It's a bit of a reach, but it's possible. And Inosuke? Oh, spoiler alert. Okay, ready? He says Gyomei-san is one of the strongest guys around. But Genya, he says he's useless because he can't use any breathing techniques. But if Gyomei-san actually had a low affinity to the stone breathing technique, it would change a lot of things. But then, this feels like a bit of a reach as well, and there's one thing I never really understood. Himejima'S was never good with kids, so why did he take in Genya as his disciple? It seems like he's contradicting himself. He doesn't trust kids, that's for sure, and in the training, unlike the other Hashiras, he tells him he can stop if he wants to. He's treating him a bit differently. When Genya asked him to take him in, he could have just said no, but he didn't do that. Why? Maybe it's because he knew what it was like to have a low affinity to breathing techniques and what it was like to eat a demon. Maybe he felt his pain. Perhaps that's why he agreed to take him under his wings. And when we look at them side by side, they have the same hairstyle. Not the same, but it's very similar. And their eyes, they look pretty similar too. Speaking of eyes, Genya nearly lost his eyes in the last episode. It was a close one. Anyways, these two, they're like father and son, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like the author drew Himejima'S as the future version of Genya. In the original, maybe Sensei had different ideas about Himejima'S character design, but then Genya lost his father and his older brother, so Sensei decided to use Himejima'S to fill their shoes, so to speak. They may not be blood, but their bond is unbreakable. Himejima'S and Genya. We never actually see it, but there's definitely more to their story. Okay, going back to my earlier point, why is Himejima'S so strong if he has a low affinity to the stone breathing technique? For one, he's good at repetitive motions. And second, because he can still use the stone breathing technique. He might have a low affinity to it, but he acquired all the necessary skills through training. These are pretty obvious, but let's keep digging further. The power he was born with, it's quite incredible. According to the fan book, when he was a baby, his brothers died from fevers and starvation, but he survived. And he barely had anything to eat since his family was poor. Then his mother passed away and Himejima'S got sick. But this made me wonder, everyone in his family died when he was still a baby. His parents, his brothers. So how did he survive? What on earth did he eat? Did he eat plants he found up in the mountains, like the spider lily? It's poisonous, but sometimes people ate it under extreme situations like starvation. The Kamados were poor too, but that was nothing compared to the kind of poverty Himejima'S went through. So maybe he ate spider lilies to survive. Eating poisonous flowers while sick, that's what Muzan did. And Muzan, he can't use any breathing techniques, but he's very powerful too. You starting to see the connection? Himejima'S is extremely strong for a human. Too strong, if you ask me, so maybe something similar happened to him. Anyways, this is all just speculation, and there's no way to be sure, but it was still a lot of fun to think about. I know most of the things I said were a reach, but it's just my personal opinion, so hope you enjoyed it. Anyways, the Hashira training arc anime, I really enjoyed it. And there was one thing that caught my attention, the scene where Tanjiro saves Inosuke. He's performing CPR, but the thing is, according to some sources, CPR was invented around the 60s, which is decades after Tanjiro's time. But similar methods were being used before that, so maybe that's why he knew how to perform CPR. Either way, it was quite impressive. Maybe Kocho-san taught them how to do it. And this scene here, this was my favorite scene. Zenitsu almost drowning in the river. It was quite funny. And in the last episode when he gets beaten to a pulp, that was funny too. I wish they'd make keychains like this. I'd buy it for sure. Anyways, that's it for today. See you in the next one. That's all for now. For more Demon Slayer theories, please like and subscribe for more videos. See you soon.